A recent correction in Australia's housing market could turn into a full-blown crash if the Reserve Bank hikes rates too soon or too fast, a global investment bank has warned. The end of the nation's world record housing boom and the drawing down of household savings has caught the RBA in an interest rate trap, says George Thoreau, chief economist at UBS. Dubbing it the household wealth effect, he has outlined a scenario where rising asset prices, falling savings and the fact that consumption has grown faster than wages leave Australians particularly vulnerable to interest rate hikes. People underestimate this sensitivity to interest rates, Mr. Thoreau said at a market briefing in Sydney on Friday. If the RBA hikes too much or too early, it runs the risk of turning a quarterly correction in the housing market into a crash. The run-up in property prices in recent times has people feeling better about their wealth, so they'd save. The RBA on Friday signaled it will likely keep the current historically low official interest rate unchanged as it waits for a slow return to healthy levels of inflation, wages and economic growth. Mr. Thoreau sounded his warning after calling the end of Australia's 55-year-long housing boom earlier this month, saying the golden years were officially over after home prices fell in Sydney for the second month in a row. A voracious construction cycle, urged on by record low interest rates and a flood of foreign investment into property, has left people complacent that their household wealth is sufficient, even if it may be tied up in their homes, leaving them potentially cash poor. Should property prices soften, as Mr. Thoreau predicts, household consumption, the money people spend in the broader economy, could very quickly dry up as people focus again on saving, impacting the nation's economic growth. The RBA has acknowledged that risk, that there is uncertainty around the consumption outlook, said Mr. Thoreau. They thought consumption would rise to above average, but it has done it so far and I think that it's unlikely to do so. There's just not enough income growth. Meanwhile, the rate of household debt continues to grow faster than incomes. People are taking on debt to buy houses but without their wages growing, said Mr. Thoreau. I think low wages are a much more structural problem than people realize. There is a lot more capacity in the labor market than many think. There's lots of underemployment and despite recent tightening, that has resulted in wage growth. And with the housing boom over, the reliance on property as the bulk of household wealth looks to be under threat. UBS expects house price growth to moderate from double digits to around 7% in 2017, and not reach more than 3% in 2018. Recent data show evidence of a slowdown in house price is fast emerging. House prices in Sydney fell 0.1% over September, the first fall since late 2015, according to CoreLogic figures. And over the third quarter, Sydney's median house price fell 1.9% to $1,167,516, according to Domain. Traditionally, Australian monetary policy has followed that of the United States, which has begun its own rounds of interest rate rises.